Dolly and I were evaluators who project. We work with the Lifelong Learning Group and did the summative evaluation for the Worldviews Network project. We're going to switch screens now and head to our visuals. Now, a big part of the summative evaluation of this project was to understand the wide variations in process that were used by the 8 sites within the Worldviews network. One thing we found from the study was it was actually a great jumping off point for any new site to start thinking about how they might adapt the Worldviews network model to fit their institution's particular needs. So in this quick session, we are going to cover an overview of what is the Worldviews network model, followed by findings about key factors that influence success in this model. And then we're going to wrap up with some examples from network sites that illustrate where you might begin if you're getting started. Versions of all of the resources we share today are going to be available to you on the Evaluation tab of the worldviews.net website. So at its highest level, the Worldviews network sought to build partnerships and expertise between institutions that had planetariums and community organizations in their area. These partners then worked together to develop stories, create visualizations, and start dialogue about important local ecological issues, all placed within the context of the entire planet and the planet's context in the universe. Now, the leadership team who envisioned the Worldviews network worked with us, the evaluation team, to create this logic model to illustrate what they hoped the project would do and how it would achieve its goals and how it related to theory.
While this logic model showed the big picture, for our session today, we wanted to focus on the activities part. In other words, what these institutions actually did. So despite a lot of variation across 8 sites, there was really a common process.
And a side note, the logic model and this graphic of the process are all available on the Evaluation tab of the worldviews.net website if you want to check them out in more detail. At the heart of the process was the Worldviews network leadership team, working with each individual informal science institution to first come up with a story idea that was about a locally important ecological issue for that site. To develop their story, they worked with local community experts or non-governmental community organizations, often scientists themselves, to identify data sources, to learn what topics they should be focusing on, or just get information about what actions are being taken locally already.
This information allowed the site then to create storyboards and narratives of how to tell their local story and to integrate the scientific data. They used a story framework of cosmic, global, and local perspectives related to the topic. Each story was integrated with visualizations of data adapted specifically for a full dome environment.
And amidst all of this story creation and visualization creation, the site was also planning the logistics to host an event in which they would present this show of visualizations and a live delivered narrative that they'd prepared. Sometimes these happened within existing programs that the site did, or sometimes they created something entirely new. These events were called Bioregional Community Dialogue Events, or BCD events for short. And some of the sites even followed their presentations with a facilitated dialogue session for interested audience members who stuck around afterwards. And all of this was being done to achieve larger goals of getting audience members to understand these ecological issues, to feel hope about potential solutions, and build awareness of things that were actively being done locally to address these issues.
Now, if hearing all of this, your first reaction is, gosh, that sounds like a lot of work. How could we possibly do this on our own? We're here to help. Specifically, we want to give you some starters to get going and some examples from the sites in the network that really showed strategies that were doable for a site given their unique circumstances. Evaluation showed that one of the biggest influencers of how a site actually used this model was its incoming strengths and the things that they weren't so strong in. So we suggest that all sites start with a self-assessment in each of the main areas of expertise that the creation of a Worldviews network production would draw upon.
So we suggest a site during the self-assessment look at its teaching and presenting expertise. Sometimes we call that pedagogical expertise in the project. This refers primarily in this case to delivering live presentations for an audience. It also refers to the ability to develop compelling stories or narrative for your event. Another area of expertise to consider your abilities is earth science content. So how much you know about the specific issue around which you hope to center your event. Technological expertise is another key area. So this is referring to, one, your skills at presenting with UniView software, but it also is referring to your abilities to create or adapt visualizations for your technological format. And then there are a few other factors. Facilities is one to consider. So just what do you have? A full dome planetarium theater, just a smaller portable dome, or a flat screen? Technology can influence what expertise you need, as well as what size audience you can work with at any one time. And finally, think about if you have any interest in doing a real dialogue with your audience and engaging them in that, what skills are in your team for actually facilitating that? We found that those skills were important to transition to dialogue rather than just a Q&A session. Now, if you're the type of person like me who kind of likes to geek out on theory, these categories of self-assessment are actually based on a theory called TPAC, and we've pulled up here the website tpac.org, which you can read more about that theory of technology, content, and pedagogy expertise. But we won't spend time on that here.
Now that you have a profile of your strengths, you can be a little strategic in thinking about how you might initiate your own Worldviews production. Specifically, we hope you're positioned to use your strengths, fill in gaps in expertise with existing resources, and really align with your institution's broader strategic goals. Let's start with the best case scenario. You have a UniView wizard, a person who has really deep knowledge of the earth science behind your topic, and an amazing live presenter. If that's true, you're well positioned to try most of the Worldviews approach on your own. In thinking about our own examples, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, the California Academy of Sciences, and the Minnesota Regional Planetarium Network were partners whose familiarity with technology and their show topic, as well as a really long history of interactive live presentation, meant they had a wealth of expertise on site already. If that sounds like you, we suggest checking out worldviews.net for examples, but really putting your own spin on things. If you want to take it even further, we suggest adding a dialogue segment to really involve the audience in your event.
But even if you don't have the capacity to do everything from scratch, a really important part of the Worldviews approach is flexibility and figuring out how to leverage whatever it is you do have, and you can be part of this project. Now, maybe you're really strong in earth science content, and you've got world-class presenters on your team. But the idea of finding and compiling your own data sets and visualizations is a little scary. That's okay. So one example we have to share is from one of the Worldviews Network partners, Renzi. They had a great outreach team and a strong organizational focus on the earth science content of their show. They had a lot of technological expertise too, but they were a site that's not usually open to the public, and so hosting a live planetarium show was a little out of the ordinary. So in this particular case, the Worldviews leadership team actually helped them package their local data into what would be projected on the screen. And the Renzi team took on the work of developing their story, involving community partners, and hosting what was, for them, an unprecedented on-site event. So at this point in the project, many of the Worldviews presentations that other sites have developed are plug-and-play show packages, essentially, that you can use with the UniView Planetarium software. We welcome your using these visual resources to tell your story. If you'd rather mix and match data sets to build something new, you can even rearrange and project data sets on a flat screen, which reduces some of the challenges of translating data into a dome environment.
If you're strong in technological expertise and giving live presentations, but maybe not as much with the earth science content, we're looking at you planetarium educators, we strongly suggest connecting with local advisors to help you fill in some of those blanks. You can browse the Worldviews storyboards to get an idea of scope and orientation, then think about what might be an important issue for your area. For example, staff at the University of Michigan Museum of Natural History were really well acquainted with how to give a planetarium show in terms of both projection and presenting spacecraft. But they needed some help fact-checking and filling in gaps about areas that were less familiar, like sustainability and natural resources in their area. So they reached out to university faculty and other local researchers to get their questions answered. If you're in a similar position, we recommend getting in touch with local government agencies, organizations with an interest in your issue, and really working labs and researchers in your area, many of whom are really eager to help and participate. For ideas about what kinds of advisors you might consider contacting, try taking a look at the Partners and Credits tab of any Worldviews event listed online.
Now, let's say you're strong in earth science content knowledge and technological skills of preparing things for the dome, but you have less experience with giving live presentations or teaching in some fashion. Now, we will say all of the Worldviews Network sites in the original project did come in with experience giving live presentations in their planetariums. So this really wasn't a complete weakness for any of the cases that we looked at. But we did see examples where giving live presentations about ecological content, which was inherent in Worldviews, was more of a new challenge for some of our sites. For example, at the American Museum of Natural History, the planetarium educator delivered the cosmic portion of the show, the part that talked about the uniqueness of Earth in the universe as a place that sustains life. But when it came to the narration about the ecological portions of the story, someone else who was more comfortable with that ecological content took over to deliver those portions. So for you, think about your abilities to deliver this type of story, and if there are others in your institution or partners you could look to that might be able to help if it's not an area you're most comfortable with.
Now let's say you've only got one of these areas of strength. That's okay. We suggest finding a partner. Oftentimes you'll find that where someone locally has a really good handle on one of these areas, one of their neighbors might have a better handle on a different area. And so you can help each other fill in some of those gaps. If you have a compelling idea about a locally important issue, our 8 sites, which were very different from one another, demonstrate that there are interested potential partners in a whole lot of communities, many of whom are interested in combining forces to create a new type of programming.
So that's about it for us. We hope this overview gave you a sense of just what it means to produce a Worldviews Network event, and that the examples from our current 8 sites gives you an idea of where you might start if you're new to all of this. We urge you to check out all of the resources on worldviews.net, but particularly the evaluation tab. Under there, you're going to find things like our summative evaluation report and a summary, which is a little bit briefer, but the full report has the full case studies of the 8 sites, some of which we mentioned today, that you can look into and get in more depth. We also have the cross-site findings for commonalities and visitor evaluation results, which we didn't even touch on today. You'll find the project logic model that we displayed earlier, and all of those visualizations and self-assessment tools, they're right online for you. I hope that was helpful, and thanks, and good luck.